If you've got a foothold on YouTube and you had to pick one platform, you are on the right platform. That audience, there's so much value there.
Alrighty, welcome back to Creator Generation. This week we are joined by Brendan Gahan. Welcome, Brendan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, Brendan, I normally cook up our introductions, so I'm going to throw it to you and you tell us who you are and maybe why we're talking to you.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Brendan Gahan. I'm a partner and chief social officer at Mekanism, which is an independent creative agency. We do a lot of work with Fortune 500 brands, mostly consumer-facing brands, and I think kind of what prompted this conversation was the fact that like my background is very much in the influencer marketing space. Did my first brand deal in 2006 with Smosh on like a brand that doesn't even exist anymore, but kind of saw the writing on the wall and was super pumped on like working with influencers and creators, and just kind of ran with it. And I actually, after my first agency job, went and joined Mekanism, and then did a ton of influencer marketing there and like viral video stuff and a lot of early social, and then joined Fullscreen, one of the YouTube MCNs. And then I started my own influencer marketing agency. And then in a very roundabout way, ended up selling that to Mekanism and rejoined them, and have been back there for about six years, I think. And let's see, otherwise I sit on the VidCon advisory board, and yeah, really love the creator space.
Yeah, and like I was saying just off air, like Brendan, we've been stalking you online for a while because like you do create great content yourself. Like you're not just a expert, you're a content creator as well, and like some of the best sort of thought leadership in this space, not just for brands and advertisers, but for creators. I genuinely believe that. So we're stoked to have you here. And you sort of mentioned your early influencer marketing campaign, and I think you said 06, right? So does that make you, are you the godfather of influencer marketing? Like, are you the...
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely early. I don't know if I was the earliest or not, but definitely early, and stuck with it, and have continued to stick with it. I mean, it's fun, it's like a great space. Like I remember when I first got into it, like just like the contrast between sort of like the impact you could see in working with influencers versus like, a TV ad or a billboard or radio ad. And to me, I just remember being early on, like, I don't get it. Like we saw it worked once. Like, why aren't we just doing this for everything now?
Yeah, totally. Like I used to work in production for advertising. So like I was kind of like, I ended up here doing what I do, like in a creative generation changer, because I was trying to probably do something similar to what you're doing, but just getting really frustrated. There was a term that used to always come to us from ad agencies, and I'm sure none of them listen to this, so I'm not burning any bridges, but it was always like, oh, it's only online. It was always like a throwaway. So it's like, we're doing a big campaign, but it's only online. I don't know if that's the pervasive sort of attitude anymore. Maybe you can tell us, but like, that was a little while ago.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not as explicit, but I definitely think it's like, it's weird. Like now I feel like it's almost just like the spectrum is much broader in the sense that there's a lot of people that like totally get it and are bought in, but there's still a huge segment of like, the brands and agencies and that it's new to them, or there's opposition to it. And I mean, even with all the headway, I'm always shocked at how many people are like don't quite get it or aren't bought into it.
And can I ask though, I mean, obviously with you being so early into the game, when you like identified the opportunity, like what was that like? Obviously back then there was nothing that really came before it. How did you look at that and go, hey, this is a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, it was really just this, I mean, I guess it was a few things. One was I was brand new to advertising, and like I remember I'd just been like basically told what branded content was. And so like that was stuck in my brain. I was like, whoa, like that's like a form of advertising. And like I thought that was the coolest thing. And so like I had that in the back of my head. And always thought that was really cool. And at the same time, it was like YouTube was blowing up. And you know, I was on MySpace, and I was like the youngest person in the office because I'd been an intern and had like just gotten hired. And so for me, it was like I was consuming all my media online, you know? And so to me, it was just like, this is where I'm spending my time. Why aren't we advertising here? And so it was really as simple as sort of like, these numbers are massive. And I want to tap into that.
Fair enough. And I mean, obviously it's developed a lot since that point. And what though what's been your sort of method in developing that art?
I would say it's like overall like very hands-on. We're not trying to micromanage the creators, but trying to do a lot more of the like vetting in that early stage and like deep onboarding, so that we don't have to do a lot of like, you know, armchair art directing, because nobody likes that.
Did you have to learn that the hard way, like the vetting of creators?
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of evolved to that pretty quickly, but we had to like learn it and relearn it multiple times, because like, you know, maybe a client really loved this creator, and so like it was like it, instead of starting with like sort of like the idea and the strategy, it started with the creator. And that didn't happen too often, but the handful of times it did, it inevitably came back and bit us in the ass. Like you end up going over budget or working with somebody that's not really excited about it, and they under deliver. And yeah, so
any dirt you can drop? Or any,
no.
Maybe without throwing anyone under the bus, or is that just not possible?
I mean, I won't name names, but like I remember one program we paid these creators, you know, like a lot of money, and you know, we nailed down this like great idea, and then they went off. I mean, they went off, and they're like, they were late. They came back late, and we're like, you know, we tried that idea and it didn't work. So can we just try and do some vlogs? And it's just like we're paying you so much money, and like this is like you like all this time is wasted, and like this is where we're at. Like that was pretty rugged, and that was one of those things where a couple of those red flags were there. Like we knew they were busy, we knew they had a lot on their plate, and but everyone was so in love with them as like the partner that we were all sort of in denial about it.
Were you also sort of secretly hoping it would be like that a Casey Neistat Nike moment, where like over budget and late, but comes out with like the best branded content ever?
I mean, I was certainly hoping that, but pretty sure that wasn't going to be the case.
You mentioned also like looking ahead in the future, and you sort of keep saying it, like partnership for creators. Like, is that something like that is more like crystal ball, or even the here and the now? It's more of a partnership that you're looking at with creators and brands, rather than like pay to play, do a post or something?
Yeah, I mean, I would say our philosophy is very much like form as deep a partnership as possible. And that's generally the way we try and sell the programs to the brands that we're working with. You know, occasionally we will do sort of like one-offs, but that's probably the exception now. And it just like works so well when you can form like a really deep partnership with a creator, because like all that work is in the upfront piece, you know, like the like identifying, negotiating, onboarding, like the first 1 or 2 activations, like getting everyone on the same page. Like that's like the heavy lift, and then to just drop it after that is like such a waste of time. So like, we've done probably my favorite campaign that we've done was with or like influencer campaign we've done was like with Mountain Dew, where we did like a 2.5 year long program, and we signed creatives to like multi-year contracts, and like it was awesome because like after you kind of get everyone on the same page, you're able to be really nimble and like jump on real-time opportunities. The client like knows the talent and their nuances, and vice versa. And it just like, it's also, I think from a viewer standpoint, so much more impactful, because you're not like working with a competitor one week and another the next. Like I always like reference make the analogy that like, well, what if like Nike had only paid Jordan to wear Nikes his like very first game, and then just were like, great, we did it, we're moving on. Like, well, then like the next he would have done Adidas, and the next Converse, and the next Reebok. It's like we look at that and we're like, that's silly. Like nobody would like, it would be idiotic for them to do that, but yet like brands do it all the time with creators.
And it's definitely something we're seeing, like as working with a lot of creators and brand deals, is that it does feel like the brands and the agencies do want to do longer term deals with the creators and build it out there. But you can still see there's just that little bit of hesitancy about the reliability, right? Like, is this actually going to work out? Are we going to get it on time? Is it going to be consistent with something I guess they used to when they work with traditional media and traditional ad campaigns? How do you think that's going to be going into the future?
I mean, I think in the short term there will continue to be issues. I mean, one thing, I mean, I'm sure you guys experience this all the time with creators, like you just said, like that happens like pretty frequently. It's both like a pro and a con when they sort of have like a bigger team and management. Like sometimes it creates more layers, but at the same time, like they'll be more organized sometimes. Like I think that there's always going to be an element of that. A lot of these people, they're great at building audiences and creating content, but they're not project managers. But I do think, the bigger creators more and more are building teams around them, and teams are forming around them, which kind of professionalize it. And they're like mirroring, traditional businesses more and more. However, one way we've kind of solved for that is basically by sort of like anticipating it and like referencing that Mountain Dew partnership that we did. We worked with, I think it was like a half dozen creators, and we would kind of have kind of like evergreen content being rolled out, which, if they were a day or two off one way or another, it didn't really matter because like content was always going out there. And then we had the tentpole sort of moments, and usually, more planning was going into that, and we were doing a little bit more management, but we also would sort of like double up. So it was like, the whole thing was never contingent upon like one single point of failure. And so it was never, people did miss dates. I mean, we had a lot of content, but it was never this like, we were really fortunate in sort of like structuring that way. And I can't take credit for it because I wasn't running the day-to-day on it. But we were never like really left in a jam that was really that bad, by sort of anticipating that and making sure we had like, 2 to 3 launching these, key tentpole moments at each time.
I love it. Hey, just thinking of like all this like influencer marketing and brands like partnering a bit deeper, do brands then need to start or continue building their own social channels and influence themselves? Like, or should they piggyback off others or partner up even closer? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Or is that a core business thing and we can't just shoot that down?
Yeah. Kill off half of our social business. No, I mean, I think I think partnerships are really probably the way to go. I mean, like, I don't think there's like, I think brands should evolve and get better at social themselves. I'm a big advocate for brands. Even like we do community management for brands, and I oftentimes am like, why don't you guys do this in house? Like, the lines of communication are so much more compressed. But I think brands do need to be more like creators. But I think the key is really sort of like that partnership. If you're already an established brand, you're not going to ditch that. But you can go. I think like the G Fuel model, like that energy drink.
Yeah.
I think what they do is like so brilliant, like because they'll develop like product lines around creators, and they'll co-market those, and it's awesome because it's still the G Fuel brand, but like PewDiePie can come out and be like, this is mine. And so he's promoting his brand. He's not pushing it to another product. He maintains that core brand equity, and G4 kind of gets that halo benefit.
Yeah, I actually have a little box of the PewDiePie G Fuel thing on my desk right now, actually.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
The tang of PewDiePie sweat is infused with the G Fuel powder.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting flavor. Hey, look, we're talking about it a bit, like influencer versus the creator. This idea. I mean, we've talked about influencer marketing, and I think creators are now thinking, hey, we're not just influencers; we want to be known as creators now. And I think I feel like there's more value in that when you talk about it that way. How are you finding that evolution?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, creators, I feel like you're right, is like the term that I think has gotten a lot of traction. I feel like, oftentimes influencers sort of has some baggage and negative connotations. The fit teas of the world sort of. I think that's what sort of like influencers kind of conjures up oftentimes. I personally tend to use them somewhat interchangeably, sort of based off of like who I'm talking to and sort of what I assume their sort of thinking and philosophy on it all is. Like, with some brands, if it's not a space that they are really deep in, it's probably just easier to say influencers. But outside of that, oftentimes we talk about creators internally, and I've noticed that like working with the creatives internally, oftentimes communicating, like making that distinction that like they're creators as well, and using that handle, I think helps kind of soften the beachhead a little bit in sort of like the adoption and collaboration with the creators. And oftentimes, one thing more and more we're doing is like working with, creators because of the content that they create more so than the influence they have. We don't do that a ton, but occasionally that's the case because like we're like this person, like they nail like the vibe and look we want. And we don't necessarily need their audience. Like it's great that they have it, but the focus and emphasis is really their content creation capabilities.
Hey, speaking of the difference between like creators and influencers, and an expert, you're creating a bunch of content, like I alluded to before. Are you a creator? Are you an influencer? What are you? Are you just someone who's got something to say?
That's a good question. I don't know. Like, I definitely don't. I don't think I view myself as any of those. And I think it's just I don't know. I guess like to be honest, I don't know why. I guess I haven't really like reflected on it. I just like started doing it, and yeah, it's like it's been really fun. I definitely think it the impulse to do it stemmed from like I have a blog and I used to write a lot, and like I kind of found myself writing a ton and never posting it, and I wanted to get over that. And so I was like, I'm gonna set a goal of posting to LinkedIn once a day, because it seemed very attainable. It's like, if I have to post something once a day, like worst case, like I can write a little sentence and share an article and stuff. So I just kind of did it to get over that kind of mental block, and sort of just continued to run with it. And then I started TikTok a few months ago. But yeah, I don't know how I'd categorize myself, to be honest.
I remember having this conversation with a YouTuber who had like maybe 150,000 subscribers, and they were like, they sort of shirked back when like introduced them as a YouTuber, and that's their full-time gig. And they're like, I'm like, look, right here, right now, we're calling you a YouTuber, and like, you're gonna own this. And it's kind of like, it was just like that. Oh, it's maybe it's still like you haven't set out to be that, and it sort of happens, and so you sort of don't self-identify. But I reckon you can wear a creator badge, like your TikTok and your LinkedIn. We'll hand it over. Like, I reckon you can step up to the mantle as a creator, because your TikTok, you've been going only a few months, and I think, and what, 70 something thousand followers, and I think the other day you hit 1 million likes, which is pretty badass. So like, what are you doing on TikTok? You're not doing dance routines, are you? Like, that's the
not yet. Yeah, I mean, like, I mostly just talk about sort of what I think is interesting within social media. And it'll be, I actually feel like I need to like define the format even more, but like, I'll talk about like, the psychology of marketing and social media. That's probably like one of my favorite things to talk about. And then occasionally I'll talk about like influencer marketing or various, content strategies. And then oftentimes I'll comment on sort of like, what's happening in the space, or break something down in terms of like, if an account is blowing up, why are they doing that? Or, brand is doing something, how are they going about doing it, and what do I see? But yeah, basically it's kind of the business of social media and influencer marketing. So I think for TikTok, it's still relatively niche, although there's definitely more marketers than like even I originally thought. Like, I knew it was much bigger than teens dancing, but there's a lot of really interesting people on there.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about TikTok is obviously, for many people, it's pretty new. Like the evolution of social marketing and influencer marketing is so heavily tied to the evolution of the platforms, isn't it? Right. So, social influencers are out there doing their thing on like Facebook, and then something comes along, and then it's there, and then it's there. Like, that must be one pretty worrying for brands, or exhausting for brands, or is it exhausting for an agency as well?
It can be. For me personally, I love it, because like I think I'm a little bit like ADD. Like, I get so bored of like I feel like there was this window of like, I don't know, maybe like 2016, 2017, 2018, where it felt like things were a little bit more stagnant. Like, everybody was kind of running through the same playbook of like, well, we're going to allocate the bulk of the budget to, Facebook and Instagram buys, and, focus on the paid assets. And, that sort of like gobbled up so much of the social dollars. And then there weren't any, or as many new players. And in the last like year or two, it's been really exciting to sort of see a lot of that, just like these new platforms emerge and really shake things up again, like, TikTok, but then also that whole sort of format. There's so many cool new platforms out there that are adopting it, and getting real traction. There's like, Triller and Clash and Rizzle and probably a million others, and like, these platforms have millions of people on them, and and then more recently, Clubhouse, etc. So it's, you know, and then Dispo launched the other day. It's like, it's an exciting time, and like, it can be a little bit, you know, like stressful, but overall, I think that disruption is really the big opportunity. And like, I love sort of like being like, this is a blank slate. How are we going to tackle it? That's like the fun challenge, I think.
Well, how do you assign value then to these different things? Like, you know, the value of a creator on TikTok compared to a value of a creator on YouTube, right? They might have both of 100,000, you know, followers. How does that work in terms of where a brand can see value?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, short answer is it all depends, but I would say like it's very much supply and demand driven. You know, I think a lot of TikTokers can be more, I would say a lot of, if I was going to generalize, I would say like YouTube number 1, TikTok number 2, and then like Twitter and Instagram probably like tied, you know. There's always exceptions that prove the rule, but like I don't think Instagram is like, it's not nearly as impactful as it was. And it's so expensive to work with creators there, whereas you can get you know, a comparable creator or even a much bigger creator on TikTok, and because the platform is so new and underdeveloped, they're way less expensive. And so I think there's like sort of like a moment in time right now where it's really undervalued. Yeah, I don't know if does that answer the question, or did I just create more questions?
No, I mean, I think you kind of saying that both on the brand and advertiser side, but on the creator side, there is significant advantages to being first mover on a new platform, right? Like, is that kind of like you can get? I mean, I know I read an article or an email from you late last year based off your TikTok experience, and you're basically like, get on TikTok now is the end of it. So is that where it kind of leans to? Like, there's new platforms, get on there and go hard?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a huge element. Like, you know, with TikTok, for example, like right now, organic reach, I saw a stat from them recently. Organic reach is 118% for brands. Now, brand on Facebook, like, you're lucky. I mean, it's low single digits. Like, it's garbage. So that's like a multiple of like 20 plus. And it's kind of like a natural evolution that like organic reach declines. You know, in 2006, YouTube, the median views per video was 10,262. 10 years later, in 2016, it was 89. So those early adopters were getting 115 times, you know, more views. And you know, on Facebook, organic reach was 16% in 2012, and now it's like, you know, whatever, 2% or something. So being early, you can get a disproportionate amount of value for sure.
It is a fascinating time because there are some things that are obviously happening. Like, obviously TikTok's emerging, but you know, you got things like Clubhouse coming up too, and you know, YouTube Shorts, which is getting a ton of traction as well. I guess from a creator's point of view, like, what should they be doing? Like, where should they be focusing? Or if it's not one particular platform, like, is there a set of principles you recommend they follow for new platforms?
Yeah, I mean, there's always like a cost benefit of like time and resources. So, you know, it's very much an individual choice. And I think it'd be really hard. Like, if you're really established, like YouTuber, like that's such a valuable property. You definitely don't want to take your you know, foot off the gas there. However, I think regardless of sort of the where you decide to sort of invest your time, I do think that one thing all the creators should be doing, and all the you know, brands as well, is owning some direct line of communication to their audiences. Because you know, we just, as we just saw with those numbers, it's like organic reach declines, all these things, they decline. And like, who knows, you can get booted off a platform
well, Brendan, and you're aware of this, but Facebook in Australia has banned all news
yes.
organizations, and you cannot share news links at all. And news is not just the big boys, it is like your local city guides, their news. You cannot share that. Their Facebook pages are shut down. The big media companies, gone skis. So, but yeah, like what do you do then? Like, where do you go?
Yeah. Like, that's insane. I'm sure nobody, 6 months ago, a month ago, even, I mean, I don't know exactly how it's being communicated out there. Like, I think I've heard about it being a possibility for the first time like a week ago or something. And I was like, oh, that's never going to happen. I'm sure everybody else thought the exact same thing. But like, yeah, you're right. It's like you're building on somebody else's land. And we're seeing these sort of like edge cases, or what started out as edge cases, becoming more and more common. And so there's like this kind of confluence of events, like you might get kicked off, organic reach is declining, you might get canceled. And so like, I think it's really smart to sort of invest in that direct line of communication, because you can't rely on these other platforms. And then, if another platform explodes in popularity, you can use your direct line of communication to help funnel them over that way. So I think that's really like a really important, it's like an insurance policy in a lot of ways.
Do you have any thoughts on like how many is too much for a creator? Like, should they go? Where should they spend their time?
How many is too much?
How many platforms? Should they go for? Okay, let's we'll do Twitter and TikTok and YouTube, and now YouTube Shorts is a competitor directly into that space, and then you've got there's Reels on the other side, and then you've got Clubhouse all of a sudden here. Like, where do they spend their time?
Yeah. Well, I think it sort of depends in terms of where you're at and like the growth cycle as a creator. Like, ultimately, like when you're starting out, you need to sort of like ride a wave and like find that like gold rush area where you can like really, like where you can be a big fish in a small pond. That's kind of what you want, so that when it grows, you're a big fish. And right now, that is TikTok. Like, Clubhouse is awesome, and incredibly valuable, but like, I would prioritize TikTok if you're just starting out. Now, if you're established, like if you've got a foothold on YouTube, and you had to pick one platform, you are on the right platform. Like, that audience, there's so much value there. And I would also add, live streaming, Twitch to that as well. I think if you're on Instagram and that's like your primary channel and you're established, I think your time is sort of running out, and I would probably shift to, establishing that audience elsewhere.
Interesting.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
You need to change the color of your light behind you, Brendan, when you say that, to the red light.
The red light, yeah. It is interesting. I think we still look at, YouTube is still that gold standard of that in the video category there, and the engagement you get for the videos is pretty tremendous. We're looking at, we work with the Internet Historian. We're looking at a launch he did yesterday for a new video, and by the end of 24 hours, it was trending number 2 on YouTube, and thousands and thousands of comments, and like such heavy engagement. So amazing looking at it compared to a video I have seen on other platforms that can get a few million views in the first couple of days, and it doesn't nearly get as much. The feel doesn't seem like it's as much engagement. In fact, the people who view it say, okay, what's next, right? They're like, okay, what's next? Like, come on, keep giving us stuff there. Whereas on YouTube, it's like, it does feel like there's better engagement, and people go and they'll look at the back catalog and want to be part of what that creator, or be connected to that creator a whole lot more. And I mean, that's what we feel. It'd be interesting to see how that changes, especially with so many ultra short options coming online. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
a fascinating space.
live, like you touched on that. I think live is definitely like what Clubhouse is showing us is just reducing the barriers for other creators to get in. Like video is tricky, right? Like so, or like talking to creator this morning, like Discord is like what they're like. What's the difference? It's like, well, Discord like looks like another language, right? When you open it up, like if you like the first time I opened Discord, I was just like, what's going on? And before I knew it, I was getting trolled by this creators that for like grooming them, and I'm like, what? But that's like an in joke within in that community, and I'm like, oh my god, I got to get out of here. No, yeah, like, but it's just like, but live, like I think there's a connection and an authenticity and that is a buzzword within this space, but it is like, a real authentic interaction that that also connects to people, but also helps break down barriers for other people to create. So I think that's kind of going to like it's probably the numbers of like your audience are never as high, right? But that connection to your audience is much greater, and then obviously leverage comes from there. So yeah, it's that's my crystal ball. Anyway, if anyone wanted to hear what I've got to say.
Well, look, speaking of crystal balls, I mean, where do you think what are you think are going to be the next trends in things like social marketing and influencer marketing?
Yeah, we've kind of touched on a lot of them, but you referenced that those blog posts. I kind of broke it out into like really kind of three trends that I see as really sort of like the big ones. One is the rise of kind of dark social and that playing a bigger role. So, dark social being content that's shared via private channels, SMS, Discord, etc. I mean, that's just exploded. I think 2020, it really kind of came onto the scene in a big way. And, we saw like, Obama joined Community, the text message startup, like it's really valuable. And like, I've read some stats, and like the open rates on SMS are like 98% oftentimes. When in email, it's like 20 to 30%. And we talked about organic reach on social, it's lower. So I think that's going to continue to grow. I'd also add that a big part of that is, I think, sort of a swing away from like the openness of other platforms. People don't necessarily want to sort of be broadcasting everything they say out into the world anymore. They maybe want more of a sense of community. So I think that's a big one. The other one I think that's going to be really coming soon is, and it's started to get some traction, is sort of the, shoppertainment, live streaming e-commerce, the sort of QVC with influencers. That's I think going to really be growing. And I look at what's going on in China, and I think right now they're sort of like a leading indicator for what we can expect here in the US and or the West rather, I should say. And like I was reading this data this morning, and it was like I actually did a post about it, but like in China, well, first off, in China, it's massive. It's 136. It was 136 billion in revenue, sales revenue last year, and then apparently, like, it's the single biggest driver of unplanned purchases, and it accounts for 65% of unplanned purchases, which was more than 3x influencers, which I thought was crazy. I mean, like, it's mostly influencers within it, but it's the adoption is like through the roof, and some of the talent there is, they're massive. Like I was reading this one woman, Via, or maybe it's Via. I can't. It's VIYA. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, but like she'll get like 40 million people tuning into a single live stream where she's selling stuff, and
wow,
it's wild. And like, here we're starting to see kind of a lot of these elements coming together, where you can see like where it in my mind, it seems like an inevitability. Like live streaming 2x last year. In April of 2018, rather, Ninja was like the most discussed athlete online, you know, more so than like Ronaldo and Shaq and so on. And so like we're kind of, it's live stream is gaining popularity and going mainstream. And then at the same time, the platforms are building out the kind of commerce functionality. So like, you know, Facebook launched Shop, you know, TikTok, we saw their Walmart live stream sales integration. YouTube is experimenting with it. And then like from the other direction, the commerce direction, you know, Amazon is tacking on live streaming. So the platforms are obviously investing in it for a reason. I think, you know, there's a lot of smart people over there being paid really well to think about the future of the business, and the fact that they're building out all these things, I think is probably a good signal that this is going to be important. Oh wait, yeah, sorry, I keep rambling, but there was one other thing, which was sort of like creators and influencers developing brands and being their own brands. So like, sort of like, I think there will be two models that will really develop. Like one is sort of the George Foreman grill model, you know, where we saw like basically it's a product that's essentially white labeled and you know, somebody goes out there and promote it. And that happens quite a bit now. But we'll also see more of the kind of Nike Jordan model. And I think both will work really well, but I think they're going to like really both take off this year. So like, you know, we saw Ninja has a partnership deal with Adidas. His first shoe sold out in 40 minutes. Charli D'Amelio and Dunkin' Donuts, they're developing their own, you know, coffee with her. It's, you know, we're seeing it, but it's not massive yet. So those are sort of the big three trends. Sorry, I rambled there.
Oh, that's baller. That's great. But I want to go down my favorite part of the segment. Like, it's really kind of cool to talk about the future of social advertising and creators and new business models and stuff. But what I'm really interested in is like where these internet, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, whatever rabbit hole has taken you, Brendan, lately. Where have you been? What weird, wonderful place have you been on the internet?
I have two answers. I've got two sort of guilty pleasures right now. One is the H3H3 new show with Trisha Paytas. It's like Ethan and Trisha frenemies. I think that is like the greatest thing on the planet. It's so good. It's so funny because like my fiance loves watching Trisha Paytas, and like for years I'd be like, oh my gosh, I hate her. Like, I don't want to, like, why do you watch her? I don't understand it. And then like but I always thought H3H3 and Ethan Klein in particular was really funny, and I would occasionally watch it or listen to it. But like the two of them together is like suddenly like, I don't know, I can't get enough of it. It's so good. The other one is the other one's a little bit selfish, but
your own TikTok.
Almost that selfish, but not quite. It's so a bunch of buddies, a couple of my buddies, basically a few years ago hit myself and their group of friends up, and we're like, we want to buy Ghost Town. So I invested a little bit of money, a bunch of us did. And at the start of the pandemic, one of them decided to go up there and live full time up on the mountain. And, they've been trying to develop it throughout this whole time. But, he figured all right out the, pandemic in our ghost town. And then he started doing TikToks. And then he started a YouTube channel called Ghost Town Living, and it's just exploded. Like his TikTok, I think, is like 4 million followers, and his YouTube channel is like on the verge of hitting 1 million. And like it's become like this destination, and like all these other influencers are going up there, and like it's really well shot and stuff. And obviously I've got a vested interest in it, so I'm always curious what's going on up there.
That one's news to me. I'm definitely, that's like straight up, oh yeah, let's just buy Ghost Town and make rad content. Like, I defy anyone not to want to at least check that out. Like, that's just brilliant. gold. Frederico, have you been anywhere weird outside of airplane?
No, well,
live sim?
I have been. Yeah, I've actually been on a bit of a cooking rabbit hole. I don't know why I hadn't seen him before. Like Sam, the cooking guy. He's got a channel where he does a lot of things that are very not ambitious, but big and like interesting and like crazy. But I sort of watched one, and then I started watching like just all of them. And I mean, the things I'd probably never ever make myself, but it just like it's fascinating. I think it's just the way he approaches it. I think it's like, yeah, he's like, this is awesome. And I think he has a bunch of restaurants, and you can actually go to the restaurants and buy these things if you really wanted, if you didn't want to make them yourself. So yeah, I've been checking out his wonderful recipes, very probably heavy recipes, but that's been a bit of a rabbit hole for me.
Interesting. Anyone care where I've been lately?
Yes, and we definitely
Probably
do. Tell us.
Well, it's interesting because it's what are they? Chad and JT goes deep. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That's sort of some.
That sounds so familiar.
It's these hilarious, like, guys that are sort of parody of surfer LA dudes, but their tagline is, like, for Chad anyway on Instagram, is activist / savant of Stoke, and it's they go around and do a whole bunch of parodies, and sort of like at the moment they've been doing a whole bunch of stuff around like mask wearing and COVID, and they sort of play stupid, and they hang out, and it's kind of like the comedy Louis Theroux sort of
Nice.
like surfer, LA surfer guys. They sort of, the latest video, I have no idea actually how I got there. I think it was through Instagram, but then I ended up on their YouTube. But they've been wanting to rage, like party, and they haven't because of COVID. So they turned up to a probably illegal Christian rock festival wearing full hazmat suits, and sort of a couple of surfer Stoke dudes. They were very friendly about it, but they hung out at a Christian rock festival and got on the Stoke. A few times they asked people if they were also on Molly, but I don't know if that was understood. But very smart, very funny. Yeah. Chad and JT goes deep. Yeah.
I have seen those guys. They're hilarious.
How much of your watching is, social video, Brendan, compared to your entertainment watching?
Maybe like 50-50. It's funny, like when I started creating content, that really like ate into the tiny little bit of free time that I did have. But my fiance and I do watch The Office, like basically like every night we'll watch like an episode when we have dinner. But outside of that, in the occasional movie, it's almost all like social video. Although, to be honest, I don't even consume that much of that. Like, I feel like I'm kind of oddly detached from TikTok in a lot of ways, because like I'm so busy like making it or just doing my job that like I don't actually like. I'll get to spend a little bit of time with it, but I don't watch that much really anymore.
Ricky Tick, I reckon we could talk to Brendan for many, many hours, which, maybe we will, but we won't record it. But I think, yeah, it's a good place to leave it there. Brendan Gahan, thanks so much for hanging out with us on Creative Generation. It's been very enlightening. Awesome. Love it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. This is really fun. I really appreciate you guys reaching out and hosting me.
Thanks for joining us. And
Thanks,
yeah,
mate.
we'll chat soon.
Creative Generation, look on the mic.